Hello and welcome to another edition of the SHRM Labs Workplace Tech Spotlight. My name is Guillermo Corea, Managing Director of SHRM Labs, SHRM's Workplace Innovation Lab. I will be your host for this new series where we shine a spotlight on some of the most interesting future of work innovators and disruptive technologies. Before we get started, some housekeeping and general announcements. For any startups listening to us today, the Workplace Tech Accelerator application period for the 2023 cohort will open on December 1st and it will close on January 16th. The application period for the Better Workplaces Challenge Cup, the leading workplace tech pitch competition, is open. The deadline for startups to apply is January 15th. This year, we're further expanding the competition globally to even more countries and adding a new track for SHRM members to showcase how you are innovating the workplace. The application period for individual SHRM members will open on January 2nd. The winner of this competition will receive a trip to the SHRM Annual Conference and Exposition, which is happening next year in Las Vegas from June 11th through the 14th. As many of you know, this is the largest HR conference in the world. Lastly, for those of you watching on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, please share this live stream and tag SHRM. You can also use hashtags SHRM Labs as well as Workplace Tech. So let's move on to today's topic. So today we're going to be touching on an important issue, improving the new hire experience for frontline workers. According to a recent Forbes article, hourly workers represent more than half the US workforce and their pay is at an all-time high. Yet leaders continue to struggle attracting, retaining, and engaging frontline workers amid severe talent shortages, frequent resignations, and the quiet quitting phenomenon. Several factors explain this, including there are fewer workers due to the demographic changes. In 2018, Amazon actually changed the entire landscape by raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour, and labor participation and immigration rates have dropped, thereby exacerbating the talent shortage. Frontline work shortages and high inflation have driven workers to expect more from employers. Leaders who address concerns in a thoughtful way can differentiate their organizations. So improving the new hire experience is certainly key to addressing this workplace challenge. So joining us to talk about this topic is Andrew Magliosi, CEO and co-founder of Mainstay. Drew, thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the stage. Before we jump into it, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about Mainstay?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Guillermo, first and foremost, and including us in the Workplace Accelerator, too. It's an awesome program. So couldn't endorse the pitch competition and the accelerator more. First, myself, I'm a technologist by profession, as well as a bit of an amateur behavioral scientist. I've always been fascinated by the why behind human behavior and how technology can support people to achieve their fullest potential. So Mainstay is an engagement platform powered by behavioral intelligence, which is really the combination of those two interests for me. And what we do is we help employers attract, retain, and develop their workforces more effectively.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, let's jump right in since we have a short amount of time here. So based on your experience, what are the main issues and challenges you're seeing as it regards to frontline workers, and what are some of the things that companies out there are doing about it?
Yeah, so from the big picture, sort of why now, before COVID, company culture was something that most of us took for granted. It was sort of the thing that happened at the water cooler or the lunch table at work. But when those face-to-face moments were taken away from us, those rituals, we had to find another way. And now that we're turning the page on COVID, there's a distinct opportunity to move forward and intentionally create a culture really that is even better than it was before. But we have to be intentional in order to do it, and we have to lead with listening. And so it's particularly important in employee onboarding we've seen, particularly this ghosting phenomenon, requires a company to make, one, a great first impression and to welcome someone with open arms into their community. And so interestingly enough, you brought up the minimum wage. One of our partners is a major e-commerce company, and they were really struggling with ghosting. Nearly half of their warehouse workers were not showing up for their first day of work. And they thought the issue was all about money. And they assumed, oh, they're going off and getting jobs elsewhere. But it turns out it was actually a cornucopia of things. And let me show you really quickly what I'm talking about, because we ended up looking deeply into the data with them and learned that, hey, actually, I think I can share my screen really quickly. It wasn't about money. That was actually among the least of their concerns. In fact, almost twice as many people as cared about money didn't even drop out of the process to begin with. And they said things like, I didn't leave the hiring process. You never got back to me. Another huge portion, was getting tripped up by missed deadlines. This last quote, I'd be in training right now, but I missed the deadline for the internet speed test. That was for one of their call center workers. You wouldn't make an exception. And finally, the biggest, most common factor was this, shift in scheduling. 2:30, I have to pick up my kids every day. That shift just doesn't work for me because I couldn't find anyone to depend on. And so while we are oftentimes looking for a silver bullet, there's only, silver buckshot really to attack all of these issues. And so shining a light on them, understanding what parts of the population are affected so that we can adapt accordingly is really the key to understanding people and responding appropriately.
Excellent. So what do you think is driving the shortage of frontline workers?
It's an assortment of all of those things, but I think fundamentally there is a reckoning with that type of work and people wanting to feel appreciated, feel connected, and feel heard. In fact, Jim Link, in talking to him, he mentioned,
and by the way, for the audience out there, Jim Link is SHRM's Chief Human Resources Officer. So that's who Drew is referring to.
Oh, sorry, Guillermo. I assumed Jim was a household name. He is huge into this idea of thriving community. And he gave me this unbelievable quote, which is so abundantly true, which is that everyday progress requires everyday feedback, which requires everyday engagement. And frankly, this has been a common set of practices among white collar workers. And it's time now that we ascribe the same practice to, blue collar, frontline, deskless workers as well. Their voices matter and they want to be heard.
Absolutely. Based on the data that you have seen, and obviously, from the relationships that you have with your customers, right? How vulnerable do you think frontline workers feel right now?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, everyone is vulnerable. And I think everyone is exhausted, frankly, Guillermo. You put your finger right on it. We have the most needs we've ever had from an employee well-being standpoint. And frankly, maybe the least in the tank to address it. And so I think what everyone is feeling is this sort of sense of fatigue and an enthusiasm to move forward. And so the question is, how can we give people the purpose and connection to find that deepest part of themselves and move forward together? The yearning for togetherness is something that we've had for years. And frankly, the need to be intentional about how to do it and do it again, because some of us have forgotten exactly how to be together and how, particularly in the workplace, to form community.
So beyond you showed us the graph, right? That showed, some of the reasons why this is happening, or why this critical workplace issue is happening. Are there any other behaviors that you think are driving the no-shows and attrition of frontline workers?
As I've learned, it's all the little things. And one of the ways we influence people is by having that daily conversation about the little things along the way, because frankly, in these moments that matter, there are a handful of either barriers that trip people up. And these are tiny things, particularly for frontline workers. Like, do you have a plan for transportation to work? Do you have childcare? Do you intend to come? and how can we best support you? And so having these daily conversations leading up to day one and then, going through day 90 and beyond is really the key, which is we can ask them, hey, are you coming today? And so often we've seen people at the last minute say things like, oh no, I lost my childcare. And in past circumstances, these people would have ghosted, meaning they'd never show up and they'd never say why. Uh, we can not only understand the why, but get early enough into the process so that we can influence them and say, hey, we understand, we still want you to come, you can reschedule. Or or somebody saying, I'm running an hour late, my bus got delayed today, I can't believe it. And so there are deep emotions going on with people that, in many ways, they tell us they feel sometimes more comfortable talking to an AI powered virtual coach that's helping them along the way than they would maybe to even a hiring manager, because they don't feel judged by the technology. And it allows them in a really, low risk environment to tell what's going on and find a solution to help them cross that threshold and come to work.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind expanding on that a little bit, because I know that you and I have had a discussion where you've essentially said the conventional 30, 60, 90-day onboarding check-in plan doesn't work, right? And that's one of the reasons why people are being lost. I think it would be good for the audience to understand how the Mainstay technology and platform works in that regard. Maybe you can just touch really quickly on how the SMS functionality of your platform helps in that regard.
Absolutely. Thanks, Guillermo. So typically we'll sit on top of data, an ATS or an HRIS. So we know what situation a person's in, and we'll have that daily conversation with them about whatever is happening, typically leading with listening by asking questions and letting them tell us so that we can combine, employee feedback with the data in the systems of record. And we can help them overcome little things along the way, answering their questions and just nudging them to complete or getting them connected to a manager or person to help them. And we do this primarily over text message, so it's really high signal through noise. And by doing it, we've actually dropped ghosting rates by 40% and increased recruiter efficiency by 20%, giving them really the ability to focus on the highest leverage situations. And then even after day one, you can continue nurturing someone, checking in, understanding how they're going, and even trigger some follow-on opportunities for growth and development. Say it's day 90. Typically, someone at this point makes a decision. Do they want to go and continue advancing their career? Are they happy where they are? Are you interested in taking the next step in your career? And if so, point them to educational resources and help nurture them to follow through on those. And so this idea of, hey, how can you really truly connect in a fundamental way to every single person based on their stage in the journey, really is a difference maker, particularly for frontline workers who historically haven't really had that engagement ever before.
Okay, fantastic, excellent. Well, we're getting here to the top of our time. I know that you guys have some great research or a report that's available, right, in regards to this large e-commerce retailer. In case people are interested out there, we can certainly post the link on the chat, and if anybody's interested, obviously you can contact us or contact Mainstay directly. Drew, any last words that you have for our audience?
No, just if you are interested in exploring how things could be far more than the way things were, we would love to talk, because we are extremely interested in using engagement to push the envelope on what could be possible, particularly with frontline workers who have enormous potential that we just need to tap into. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, please let me know.
Okay, fantastic, excellent. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Drew, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation, and we hope all of you enjoyed it out there. If you'd like to learn more about Mainstay and how they are innovating the workplace and the next generation of employees, please visit mainstay.com. Thank you all for tuning into the SHRM Labs Workplace Tech Spotlight. If you enjoyed this live stream, please share it using the hashtag SHRM Labs. WorkplaceTech, and SHRM. And don't forget to tune in to the next WorkplaceTech Spotlight on Friday, December 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. For more information about SHRM Labs, please visit us at shrmlabs.com and stay up to date. And we'll see you soon. All right. Thanks, everyone.